Hey, everybody, it is Trags Mike Petralia back with the latest installment of the Jungle Roar podcast, powered by our great friends at Prize Picks and CLNS Media. Back with me, as is usually the case, the one and only Richard Skinner. You know him better as Skinny from Local 12 and Local12.com. Skinny, we have not had an opportunity, I think, to really delve into the incredible miscarriage of justice being carried out by the Pro Football Hall of Fame and the voters. I think really we should put most of the blame here at the feet of the voters. Not only this year, but over the last 25, 30 years that he's been eligible, maybe more than that, 35 years that he's been eligible, Kenny Anderson has not found his way into Canton. Can you explain from the ground floor why he hasn't gotten into this point?
I think, unfortunately, he played in an era where the Steelers just basically dominated. I have no other explanation, Mike. The late Sonny Jurgensen, who just passed away, is in the Hall of Fame. And he did lead the NFL in passing yards a handful of seasons. He did lead the NFL in passing touchdowns a couple of seasons, never led in passer rating. Ken Anderson led in passer rating 4 times. He led in pass completion percentage 3 times. He was a league MVP. He took a team to a Super Bowl. I was looking up Dan Fouts the other day, and I like Dan. I think I was one of my favorite guys to watch in that era. A contemporary, obviously, of Ken Anderson. They played each other in the Freezer Bowl. Dan Fouts was never a passer rating champion. He did lead the league 4 times, I believe, in passing yards, 2 or 3 times in touchdowns. He was an AP Player of the Year. I don't believe he was ever MVP, but I think he was Offensive Player of the Year. Similar stats, or similar accomplishments, if you will. Not similar stats, but similar accomplishments. And yet Ken Anderson took his team to the Super Bowl and Dan Fouts didn't. And I've heard Dan Fouts fight for Ken Anderson before too.
Yep.
I'm guessing he probably feels a little guilty that he's in and Ken isn't, because you could argue in that era they were neck and neck. They played different styles, different brands. I mean, Dan Fouts played in a gunslinging offense. Ken Anderson eventually on the Super Bowl team and on that strike year team did play in a pass heavy offense. I would never call it gunslinging, but it was pass centric, even though you had 1,000-yard rusher and Pete Johnson. So I know the one that everybody throws up, and I heard a guy on a radio show that brought this up, and he's right. If you did a blind, test of numbers and put down Joe Namath's numbers versus Ken Anderson's numbers, Joe Namath pales in comparison. Now, Joe Namath also, we can understand, he authored one of the most iconic victories in NFL history, certainly
No
to cap
question.
off the AFL. He was a very good quarterback early in his career. Then knee injuries kind of robbed him later in his career. He could still sling it around, but the raw numbers themselves are honestly not very good. And so, yeah, I can't explain it. I thought maybe the whole Bill Belichick's not getting the 80% of the votes, that some of those votes were being swung towards the players, especially Ken Anderson. L.C. Greenwood was the other player that didn't get in, and I think he'd be the 9th guy on those. I mean, those defenses were great, but I don't think 9 guys deserve to go in the Hall of Fame off of that defense. Mike, I can't explain it. I wish I could. It makes me sad. It really does.
Here's my big beef. Was there a quarterback who was responsible for revolutionizing the position any more than Ken Anderson in the 1970s and into the early 80s? My answer would be no, because what he did is he took an offense that was the concept of Paul Brown, okay, but certainly of Bill Walsh, the
Bill
two
Walsh, for
working.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and you could argue certainly, and Bill Belichick has made this case to me before, that before Bill Walsh came up with the West Coast offense, it was actually Paul Brown's idea, to take advantage of the fact late in the 60s, early 70s, Bengals did not have very good offensive lines. They just didn't.
Right.
And one way around that was the quick passing game. Well, Ken Anderson was the hybrid of a guy who could throw the ball long and had receivers like Charlie Joyner and Isaac Curtis and Chip Myers. But he could also dump it to running backs like Essex Johnson, Boobie Clark. I'm sure I'm leaving out Lenville Elliott.
Doug Dressler.
Doug Dressler in 1975. I remember he had a great game against the Raiders in the regular season. Actually had a playoff touchdown. But anyway, I digress. But anyway, there was no more important quarterback to the position than Ken Anderson. Well, isn't that what the Hall of Fame is about? Players that not only exhibited great stats and did a terrific job posting great numbers, which Ken Anderson did, but he helped revolutionize the position of the quarterback in the modern day NFL. I mean, is there any more of a slam dunk case to be made? And I know our friend Jeff Hobson has made this case over and over and over and over again, much to his credit. I don't understand, based on that criteria, Skinny, why he hasn't made it to this point. I'm venting here, but there's a reason we're venting.
Yeah. No, I mean, maybe he gets dinged because they draft Jack Thompson and he loses his job for a little period of time. Although I can also argue that he got beat up for a couple of years behind even worse offensive lines, and that kind of rattled him a little bit. And the Bengals thought it was his fault when it really wasn't his fault. And Jack Thompson turned out to be a bust. And they go back to Ken Anderson. I mean, they almost went back to him by default. And what does he do? He leads them to a Super Bowl, wins an MVP. So he kind of had a second act, if you will, in his career. For the life of me, and my fear now is if you weren't making it this time, you ain't making it.
Yeah, I kind of get that sense too, but I still hold out hope. Now, I don't know how comfortable you are getting into this, Skinny, but the Hall of Fame announced a significant change to their voting process, essentially appealing to people or appeasing people like Deion Sanders, who said there's just too many people in the Hall of Fame who are very good players, but weren't the greatest of the greats.
I don't disagree with that. I don't, and that's where I would almost tell you that Ken Anderson does fall into the realm of the Hall of the really good. But you've already opened the can of worms of letting some of the Hall of the very good in already, like Dan Fouts, like Sonny Jurgensen. I'm just using the quarterback position as an example. So once you've done it, I don't think you can go back on that. Tony Perez is a really good player. I never ever once thought of Tony Perez watching him I'm watching a Hall of. Usually you know it, and honestly, that's I will tell you, I don't feel like just recalling Ken Anderson's career that was a Hall of Famer I watch. But based on others that are in, then yes, if they're in, then he should be in.
Not to digress here, but I'm going to. Tony Perez is in the Hall of Fame for two reasons. He was the anchor leader, if you want to use that term, subjective term, because he was a leader on one of the single greatest teams in the history of the sport. Two, he produced RBIs, drove in runs, and was the heart of the batting order of one of the great lineups of all time. And he did it at an extraordinary level over an extended period of time. Those would be my two arguments for him being in the Hall of Fame.
And yet during his playing days, Steve Garvey was a better player.
Overall, I would not disagree with that. I definitely would not. But that is for the Code Reds podcast, which you can catch on the CLNS Media Network. I just finished up a discussion with Brian Giesenslaw, as a matter of fact, of Reds.tv, and you can catch that on other channels here on the CLNS Media Network. Back to the Bengals and the Hall of Fame. Is there anybody else? Well, the other name that comes up, and I think it's a great argument to talk about, is Willie Anderson. Who is the bigger snub, Willie Anderson or Ken Anderson?
Lamar Parrish.
Well, yes. Okay.
I mean, Lamar Parrish. Again, this is not a criteria measurement, and nobody uses it, but it's at least tells you at least what people thought of the guy. He was Pro Football Reference's one of four cornerbacks. I take it back. They chose four for the all 1970s decade team, and he was great with the Bengals. He actually had a second act with the Washington Redskins, the then Washington Redskins, in which he was very successful there. That to me, for him as a corner, just raw, that he would get in for me just what he did as a cornerback. Then you add the return element into it where he was ridiculous. I've said it, he was Deion Sanders before Deion Sanders.
Yes.
And nobody will ever argue with me on that one because that's what he was. He literally was Deion before Deion. And yet he never gets talked about. And Ken Riley got in, and I'm happy for Ken Riley. Sadly, it came after he had passed away, but I'm happy for Ken Riley. And this is no knock. Ken Riley obviously is fourth or fifth in NFL history in interceptions. Do you know why? He was
because nobody ever
me through Lamar Parrish.
Correct. But Willie Anderson, I bring up the name Willie. You covered him, and he was considered, I think, and I don't think this is hyperbole. He was one of the greatest players at the right tackle position over an extended period of time in his era.
Yeah, and I think unfortunately in his era, right tackle was not valued like it's valued today. I think now people value the fact that hey, there's an edge rusher on each side. It used to be, you valued the left tackle more because most quarterbacks are right-handed. That's going to be the blind side for that quarterback, and so you better have your best tackle playing that spot. And that's probably still a little true today, but I think right tackle nowadays is valued way, way more than when Willie Anderson played, and I think that's the unfortunate part. It just was a position at the time that nobody thought. It's like, yeah, we'll put our worst of the two tackles at right tackle. No, he owned right tackle, and again, it just feels like he just keeps getting to the finalist stage and just can't get over the hump. This is what 3 years in a row I think he's been a finalist and didn't get in.
Yeah, I think that's accurate.
Yeah.
By the way, I'm going to throw this out there. Brian Blados was the tackle opposite Anthony Munoz?
No, Joe Walter.
Joe Walter. So Joe Walter would be the comp. And the reason I bring his name up, Boomer Esiason was a left-handed quarterback.
Right,
so you
that's
flip
right,
it,
that's right.
and his blind side would have been Walter's side.
That's right. You're right. That's exactly right. And Joe, before he hurt his knees, Joe was a terrific right tackle.
So anyway, that's it for the Hall of Fame talk, unless you've got any other thoughts on Bill Belichick and Robert Kraft. I think from my perspective, and you know where I'm going to come in this regard, there's nobody who revolutionized this coaching position more than Bill Belichick. After Paul Brown, since Paul Brown, there's not a singular coach in the National Football League who did more to change the way the position of head coach in the National Football League is viewed than Bill Belichick.
To hell with both of them, the cheaters.
Spy guy. Okay,
no,
Bill. Bill.
I honestly believe the voters, because of the stupid, you could vote for only 3 of the 5. Right. I do think the voters tried to skew towards the players, fully knowing that Kraft's going to get in, Belichick's going to get in, and rightfully so. I know there's a big deal about the first ballot. Who cares, first ballot? I mean, when you get in, you get in. And I think it'll be sooner rather than later both do get in. And I do think that the voters, when they realize we can only vote for 3, probably tried as much as they possibly could to skew to the players. And it only got one of them in, Roger Craig.
Yeah, I just can't believe Roger Craig's in before Ken Anderson. I don't understand that. But moving on to the modern day,
yes.
Cincinnati Bengals, and your thoughts right now. I want to talk about the coaching staff.
Yeah.
And I found this fascinating. Do you know how many people on Friday, when they heard that there's going to be a new run game coordinator, and it would be the tight ends coach, James Casey, they asked me, who was the previous run game coordinator? That would have been defensive line coach, Jerry Montgomery. How many fans, honest poll here of us.
Yeah.
How many fans do you think would have guessed that the defensive line coach was the run game coordinator?
You'd guess Scott Peters, and because before that it was Frank Pollock, the offensive line coach, was the run game coordinator. I do like these NFL coaching staffs anymore. It feels like they're so freaking bloated, though. You got an assistant coach of this, an assistant coach of that.
You've got 23 assistants on Zach Taylor's staff.
That's insane to me. That's just crazy. I was looking this up the other day too, Mike. I was talking to a friend of mine because he goes crazy about how many assistant coaches there are across all sports. I mean, baseball's got so many anymore. I can't remember. I was looking up an NBA player's stats. Don't ask me why. I have no earthly idea. I was looking up his stats. And whatever team it was, they had 10 assistant coaches. And I went, wait a minute, when did the NBA start having 10 assistant coaches? And it feels like that for football. You go back, I got to bring this to you the next time I see you, Mike. I've got old media guides from way back, and I love reading through them because they're just so campy. And if you go to, I've got a stack of 1970 AFC ones that I just thumb through every once in a while. Almost every one of those teams in 1970 had no more than 5 assistant coaches.
It's unbelievable.
It's crazy.
It makes you wonder how Paul Brown, to Belichick's point, Paul Brown did so much.
Offense and defense, both.
He did both,
yeah.
And he helped run the organization as the general manager and the president and the owner. Crazy. I mean, it's just mind-boggling. Yep. But I think, how do you think, first of all, James Casey is going to impact? Because I can see where Zach Taylor is going with this, because he has always raved to us about how great a job James Casey has
Yep.
done with his tight ends, and not only in the pass catching game, but in integrating him in the run concepts.
Yeah, the thing about him too is whenever you talk to one of the players at his position group, those tight ends, they speak glowingly of him too. I mean, he turned Tanner Hudson from a project into well, Tanner was always going to be a good receiver, but at least a capable tight end in this league. He found the strength of Drew Sample. It was never going to be as a receiver, but I think he found the way to make him a strong suit. I mean, he's become a very valuable member, even though we all kind of make fun of him that he can't run very well. He's not very dynamic in the pass game, but they've considered him extraordinarily valuable, and I think James Casey's been a big part of that. I don't know if we were going to get to talk to him at the combine or not, Mike. Usually we get to talk to the new coaches. I don't know if we're going to get to talk to the coaches that have changed some roles, or in this case added a role, because I am interested to hear what kind of his conceptual or his concepts are in the run game. I mean, we've gone from everything from Frank Pollock's wide zone that didn't work to having to rip that up and go to pin and pull, and whatever they utilized this past year, and the runs that they can use from under center versus runs out of the gun. Is he a guy who's more suited to say, hey, let's get Joe under the center more because it's going to help our run game and our play action game more? And so yeah, I don't know if we get a chance to talk to him next week at the combine or not. I hope we do. If not, it'll certainly be a story for the offseason, because I'm really fascinated to hear what he wants to do with the run game.
Well, let's talk about the practicality of the move for Jerry Montgomery, taking something off his plate. Do you think that is done with the thought of just focus on the defensive line and just find ways, Jerry, to motivate this, especially a young group when you're talking about Miles Murphy and Shamar Stewart?
Well,
find ways to get to the quarterback more.
Yeah, and I think a group that could get younger as well, right? We talked about Peter Woods last week, the Clemson defensive lineman. It's not just a first rounder. There's probably going to be a couple of defensive linemen taken. If they opt to move on from B.J. Hill and T.J. Slayton, then who do you add in free agency? And you're going to have to work with him on your schematics. Shamar Stewart, do you want to kick him inside on third downs more and use him as a three technique, and also get him ramped up and in? And Miles is going into his fourth year, but he didn't have a ton of reps under his belt his first couple of seasons. He's finally gotten more opportunity this past year. So yeah, I think it's an offensive or defensive line group that's going to get even younger. I mean, T.J. Slayton's a vet. B.J. Hill's a vet. B.J. Hill's a vet in this defense, although it was a new defense without Golden, but he's a vet on this roster. So I think it's a line group that's going to get even younger, is going to require more attention.
Davis Cutter. What do you know about him? Obviously, his dad.
I know his dad.
Kirk.
That's what I know.
Okay, tell us what you know about his dad, about Kirk.
His dad Dirk Cutter.
Dirk.
Dirk Cutter.
Dirk Cutter. Thank you.
Dirk's been a long-time coach in the NFL, offensive coach, and I think he had a head coach stint, if I'm not mistaken, in Atlanta, I think. But Davis Cutter played wide receiver, at Boise, I believe?
Portland State.
Yeah, that's right, Portland State. But then I thought he played at Boise, or maybe he coached at Boise.
He did. He did. He transferred.
Yeah. I'm interested to see what he does too. I mean, again, it just feels like every position group now has the assistant to the assistant regional manager, but I mean, it is what it is.
All right, speaking with Richard Skinner of Local 12 and local12.com. Well, the big game is over. It's time to shoot your shot on Prize Picks and get $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5. That's right. Prize Picks is now giving you $50 in lineups when you sign up and play your first $5. Prize Picks makes every dunk, every dime, that would be an assist, and every rebound that much more exciting. Don't miss the chance to get started on America's #1 app for sports picks. Prize Picks is simple to play. Just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections. If you get your picks right, you could cash in from all of your favorite sports, anything from basketball, baseball, hockey, UFC, soccer, college hoops, tennis, golf, esports, and much more. Also, Prize Picks now has early payouts. If your player gets off to a hot start, you now have the option to cash out those winnings before the game even concludes. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. back with Richard Skinner, Skinny of Local 12 and local12.com. You can follow him on the X at Local 12 Skinny. It is crazy season, especially when you start heading into the NFL draft. And the combine starts a week from today. Actually, sorry, a week from tomorrow. That would be Tuesday, the 24th in Indianapolis. There's going to be a ton of projections and obviously draft simulations. Mock drafts is the phrase I was looking for. Mock drafts between now and late April in Pittsburgh when the NFL draft is held. But there also is, for the Bengals, going to be a lot of crazy talks about projected trades. And I see out there fans that would love to have Max Crosby coming to Cincinnati. That ain't going to happen. I just don't see the Bengals making that kind of bold move, knowing the Bengals in the way their front office has handled business like this before. They're not going to give up
Because
primo first or second round picks for a guy who's going to be 28.
And here's why too, Mike. I mean, it would be one thing if you were one pass rusher away, a closer away from finishing out your defense. Like that's the final missing piece, and we have the cap space available to do it. Then I would say absolutely. But you have so many needs. You just can't spend a big chunk of it on one player and then bargain basement everything else. You just can't do it. I think Max Crosby is a terrific player. I think he'd be re-energized and remotivated being on a team that's got a chance to make a deep playoff run. But they're more than just that one guy away, and that's the reality of it. So I'm not giving up draft capital for a guy I'm going to have to pay a pretty penny to and then not be able to fill some of the other things I need to fill.
Here's my answer to that. As much as you have a lot of places, a lot of holes to fill, and you do, at least 3 that I can think of on defense that are priorities, and there are multiple positions which within those 3 areas. You need playmakers. And I don't want a bunch of good players who are decent, above average. You're going to need some big-time heavy hitter playmakers on that defense to come in and make a difference makers. And that would be the argument for going out and getting a guy like Max Crosby or whoever else it might be, bring him in on the defense and see if they can be what Trey Hendrickson was 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah, but you need too many pieces though. That's just it. You're not a piece away. I get the playmaker part. Just give me multiple better players, and I think you have a better defense to go along with it, and that will help maybe have you make plays or have playmakers. So, I did the athletic exercise twice, the athletics off season where you can fill in blanks and spend money on players. I did one without a Joe Burrow restructure. I did one with a Joe Burrow restructure. The one with a Joe Burrow restructure, I wound up signing an edge, a nose tackle, a defensive tackle, a linebacker, a slot corner, and a safety. And I feel like the first thing I went to look for was I wanted a defensive tackle that could push the pocket and rush the pass. I think that's where I'm looking at the moment. And it was both exercises. I went with John Franklin Myers from Denver. He had 7 sacks the last 2 years. He puts pressure on the quarterback. He does it up the middle, and I think that's been sorely lacking for them. Is they just don't push the pocket. It's honestly, to Trey Hendrickson's credit, he hasn't gotten a lot of help from the interior over the last couple of years, and still had the sack numbers he had this past year, notwithstanding. And yes, Max Crosby is a difference maker, but I got to have more players who are capable, and I just don't feel like they have them at the moment.
Bradley Chubb, released by the Miami Dolphins. What are your thoughts on going after a guy like that?
Depends on the price again. I don't know. I mean, he's kind of a meh player, it feels like, anymore. What's he got left in the tank?
He's going to be 30 years old in June.
There's that. I mean,
and multiple serious injuries.
Yeah, that's the part to me. It's not worth the risk, in my opinion. I mean, people love names. Names are
they
great.
do.
Names are great when they were great, but that just because they're a name doesn't mean that they still have anything left in the tank. So, no, I want some guys on the rise. I want some guys who have durability. Those are the guys I'm looking to go after. Names, I'm going to pass on the name part of it. I mean, I know he was released. I'm going to say I'm going to pass.
I know we've talked about possible names coming in the middle of the defensive line. It sounds like the Bengals are certainly in on DJ Reader making a return to Cincinnati, and that makes sense on a number of different levels, and we've talked about that in the past, Skinny. Name that's kind of interesting to me, and it popped up in some of the rumors out there, is Cowboys defensive tackle Kenny Clark. What do you think about him?
Yeah, again, I go back to what's the price tag for that. Again, what has he got left in the tank? It felt like, Green Bay obviously traded him for Micah Parsons, who's part of that mega deal, and they were willing to say we're okay by giving him up and what we've got in the middle. But obviously, you did get one of the elite players on defense in Micah Parsons. Um, Again, I'd have to kick the tires on it. There's a couple of guys out there. DJ Reader's one, as you mentioned. David Onyemata is a free agent. He's 33 years old, but he's coming off of a really good year. And honestly, if you draft him or if you take him and draft the nose tackle and you still have McKinley Jackson in the mix, maybe you get some snaps off of him at an advanced age. He's a one down guy that, hey, let's get in there in first down. He can put a little pressure on the passer, but he's not going to be in there in sub package stuff. He'll be there just as a run stopper. If he fills that role, because I didn't think TJ Slayton did this past year, I'm willing to cut ties and move on from him and BJ Hill both. It's time to remake that defensive tackle group.
What are your thoughts on McKinley Jackson? Because people have asked me, and I'm like, boy, it's a hard read because it seemed like he took some strides again, like the rest of the defense did in the second half of last year. But again, I don't know if it's enough to project him to be a rotational guy next year.
No, I mean, in in theory he works his way into being a rotational piece, but that's at best. And I think for him, it's just a consistency thing. I think it's a consistency of effort. And I think that's where his, maybe he started to show that late in the year and the coaches said, all right, we'll give you some run and hopefully it carries over. But you see that sometimes too, that come the offseason, guy isn't ready to go when the offseason program begins and backslides and he's not ready. Hopefully McKinley goes the exact opposite direction. He's a mountain of a human being, and he can be used in that one down run stopping role if he can get it done. And to this point, he really hasn't.
Well, if he's going to be in one role, he has to be borderline great at it, or very, very consistent at it. Right. And I don't know if I don't think we've seen that consistency. I think even Zach Taylor and certainly Al Golden would say, no, we haven't seen snap after snap after snap consistency from him. But maybe it's something where he starts to show and I don't know, in OTA. We can't even tell in OTAs because there's no live tackle. Right.
But you can tell, did the guy come in 15 pounds overweight or did he come in the best shape of his life, right?
Strength. I mean, the other thing we don't see is what they do in this weight room. And sometimes a lot of coaches, strength and conditioning coaches, get with the head coach and say, the change in this guy is totally different. He improved, 50 to 75 pounds in a squat, deadlift, all that. And that's the kind of stuff to me, it's fascinating because you can see a young player, maybe the light goes on, switch gets flipped and he turns into something.
I mean, here's the thing with these. I didn't think it was ever going to go on for Myles Murphy, and I'm still putting the jury out that he's taken a huge jump forward, but he did take a step forward, a nice step forward in year 3. Well, McKinley Jackson is going into year 3. Chris Jenkins is going into year 3. That rookie contract end of it is creeping up very, very quickly. Do you want a second contract, fellas? Well, you better start playing like it.
Okay, thank you for reminding me, Skinny. One topic I wanted to touch on is Bengals who deserve a contract extension playing on their final year of their rookie contract and heading in that direction. And I don't know if I asked you this before, but Chase Brown's an interesting case because you don't usually see running backs get extended. Are you in the camp that says Bengals should look at extending him or let him play out this season and go from there?
Yeah, I can make both arguments because both times I did that athletic exercise, I ran out of money short of being able to give Chase Brown an extension. And in the real world, do I think it's feasible? Yeah, I think they can find that money for him, and I think I would try to do that. But on my list of priorities, no offense, it's down the list of free agents I have to sign, a Dax Hill extension, a DJ Turner extension. So Chase Brown to me comes in down the list that if I run out of money and run out of things, I just going to have to kick the can down the road and try to maybe do something this offseason. It is an injury prone position. It is a position where guys flame out very quickly. I think Chase is probably the opposite. It feels like he keeps ascending. And I think he is worthy of a second contract, which a lot of running backs aren't, and I'm not a huge fan of. I do think it's one of those ones where they should try to do it, but it can't be a priority item. It's got to be the corners first, and then the free agents next.
So you are in favor of getting the corners extended
Yes.
before free agency begins.
Yes.
What is
absolutely.
the advantage of that as opposed to holding as much money free for free agents?
Well, I mean, whenever you extend them, you're trying to do it before the season starts anyway, so you're going to have to count for it from a salary cap perspective as it is. So to me, it's 6 1/2 dozen of the other. It's just a matter of just when you get it done, what does it look like, and what do you have left over. I think they can get it done and not really affect this year's cap a whole lot. I know where the athletic exercise did it, and they're usually pretty good with this. Is it only added $2 million to their cap hit for this year each?
That's
So
not
that's
bad.
not, and again, that's not long term. That's not giving them only $2 million. That's a $2 million cap hit, which would probably be a prorated signing bonus, over 3 or 4 years, however long they do the extension for. So yeah, I'm in the camp of extending both those guys.
As we wrap it up here, Skinny, talking with Richard Skinner of Local 12 and local12.com. As we get ready for the combine starting next Tuesday, a week from tomorrow in Indianapolis, where are the positions you prioritize the most for the Bengals?
Defensive tackle. I want a nose tackle who can come in and start, and I needed a 3 technique that can rush the passer. Those are my priorities. You have to address edge. You have to certainly address safety. But to me, these last 2 Super Bowl champions, if they've shown you anything, they've shown you if you can get some pressure up the middle, it just makes your defense better. Now, both those defenses, Philly and Seattle, had good players at all 3 levels. Don't get me wrong, but that pressure up the middle. I mean, let's not forget the Bengals lost the Super Bowl in LA for one big reason: a play at the end made by who?
Aaron
One of the
Donald.
greatest of all time, Aaron
Yes,
Donald,
probably.
but a defensive tackle.
Anything you're working on that you want to throw out there, Skinny, on local12.com?
Yeah, I just did that Burrow restructure and what that looks like, and the money that where that money can go. It saves a decent enough chunk that you can certainly add another quality free agent or 2 to it. This week I'm gonna a couple of websites graded the Bengals draft class from this past year. Didn't grade it very highly, so I'm gonna dive into that a little bit and see where they rank in the list. It's not very good, so it's kind of a light week. And then to your point, we got the combine next week, and that's always a busy few days.
By the way, I want to throw this in there. I actually think the 2023 draft for the Bengals,
It's looking better.
it's looking much better. And I just think that it is a cautionary tale sometimes. And I know in 2023, that was the Miles Murphy year where he was drafted in the first round. It's a cautionary tale about not making judgments too fast. And
It is. And but I would tell you this. I mean, I got to see a little more out of Miles before I deem this a successful first round pick.
And it also is an important lesson that in roster building, if you're not going to have a great free agent class, you better have both a good free agent class and a good draft class. You can't have great in one area and not so great in the other.
Agreed.
And that's what these Super Bowl teams have shown us, is that they are very strong in both elements of the roster build in the offseason.
Yeah, and in fact, New England was kind of similar, right? They had a lot of money to spend, and they spent it wisely, but they got their quarterback in the 2024 draft. They got Christian Gonzalez in the draft. I mean, they got some key parts in their drafts, too. So, yeah, I think to your point, it can't just be either or. It's got to be both.
He is Richard Skinner, does a tremendous job covering the Cincinnati Bengals and all things NFL as it relates to the city of Cincinnati. You can follow his work at local12.com. My name is Mike Petralia, Trags. I want to thank our sponsors as always. That would be Prize Picks and the terrific team at CLNS Media. Until next week, when we get ready for the NFL Combine in Indianapolis, keep that jungle roaring.